Increasing the variety of sentence length and structure by combining sentences. This is frequent advice, but it is more involved than it sounds. Why do I want to bother with this? Boxers in the ring who have little variety in their jabs and footwork are not only boring to watch, their predictability and lack of imagination leave them vulnerable to their opponents. If, as a writer, you can vary the lengths of your sentences and the patterns of their construction, then you can also increase your reader's interest and your credibility as a creative thinker. First, doing these things reduces monotony for the readers, and by changing things up, helps keep them alert and paying attention. Second, remember it demonstrates your virtuosity, your skill as a writer, and your intelligence as a thinker. Let's start with the simple strategy of combining two independent sentences into one sentence and, this is very appropriate, joining them with a conjunction. Remember that your three reliable conjunctions are and, but, and or. And for additional information, but for contrasting information, and or for choice. In the early 1900s, cocaine was used in many patent medicines. It was even present in the original formula of Coca-Cola. Here are two sentences about a well-known soft drink. They are factually accurate and grammatically correct, but these factors by themselves are not what distinguishes persuasive writing. Let's consider joining them since they appear to be related points. In the early 1900s, cocaine was used in many patent medicines, and it was even present in the original formula of Coca-Cola. Now we have joined these sentences with the comma and the conjunction and to indicate additional relevant information. Remember that the comma by itself is not enough to join these two sentences. Without the conjunction and, we would have created a comma splice, a common grammatical error. But there is another way to combine these sentences. In the early 1900s, cocaine was used in many patent medicines. It was even present in the original formula of Coca-Cola. It is a simple matter to join them with a semicolon. Be sure that if you do this, that each half of the sentence is an independent clause with the subject and predicate and therefore capable of being two sentences, or otherwise you have used the semicolon incorrectly. Let's try another two sentences. Pesticides have contaminated much of our groundwater. They have left residues on much of the food we eat. Let's try a semicolon on these two sentences, but this time let's add a transition to show how these 2 points are related. Pesticides have contaminated much of our groundwater. In addition, they have left residues on much of the food we eat. By adding the phrase, in addition, we show the reader they are simply getting further information, but we're doing so in this case in a way that strongly implies a causal connection between the 2 points. Let's also try varying the structure too. Pesticides have contaminated much of our groundwater. They have, in addition, left residues on much of the food we eat. Very often, transition words and phrases such as in addition can be moved to more than one spot within their sentence. Okay, let's combine 2 more sentences. Her 2 interests were medicine and children. She became a pediatrician. In these 2 sentences, there is once again an implied cause and effect. But in joining these this time, let's use a transition that makes this cause and effect explicit. Her 2 interests were medicine and children, and so she became a pediatrician. Bringing them together with a comma and a conjunction to avoid creating a comma splice, we add the transition word so. The resulting sentence not only reads better in a concise way, it also clarifies these ideas. Of course, there are other transitions that would work as well, or better. Her two interests were medicine and children. Consequently, she became a pediatrician. The nuance or implication of the word consequently, as opposed to the word so, suggests that the woman's decision about her profession was more deliberate. Because words, even synonyms, can have subtle shades of difference, you should try to choose your words carefully. Now, let's help a student with a history paper. Augustus gave the Senate control of the peaceful provinces. He kept under his authority the unstable provinces of the frontier. While these sentences may seem a bit dull, the bigger problem is that their relation one to the other in the context of a larger argument that the student wants to make isn't clear. Augustus gave the Senate control of the peaceful provinces, but he kept under his authority the unstable provinces of the frontier. Combining these sentences with a conjunction as simple as but clarifies the contrary idea of Augustus's exception to his general policy. But by choosing a similar transition, one again which implies deliberation on the part of Augustus, we can vary the structure and clarify the connection between the 2 points. Augustus gave the Senate control of the peaceful provinces. He kept under his authority, however, the unstable provinces of the frontier. Let's try 2 more sentences and another type of transition. An otherwise rational person often performs superstitious rituals. A baseball player may refuse to pitch without his favorite cap. The second sentence is clearly meant to illustrate and clarify the first sentence. Let's make that explicit. An otherwise rational person often performs superstitious rituals. A baseball player, for example, may refuse to pitch without his favorite cap. We joined them with the semicolon in the transition phrase, for example. This may seem obvious, but the obvious is often overlooked in first and second drafts. Let's try that again. Her apartment was full of all sorts of animals. It seemed more like a pet store than a place to live. Something about these 2 sentences back to back seems unconvincing to me, so let's join them. Her apartment was full of all sorts of animals. In fact, it seemed more like a pet store than a place to live. The phrase, in fact, adds the emphasis that the previous version lacked. Let's leave these people now, and their pets, to work out their problems, and try another type of transition. To make a rock garden, cover the area with heavy plastic to keep out weeds. Add a layer of pea gravel for the base. Here someone is helping us make a rock garden. When we combine these 2 sentences to increase the variety of sentence length and structure, let's also clarify that this is a process. To make a rock garden, cover the area with heavy plastic to keep out weeds. Then add a layer of pea gravel for the base. By using the transition word then, we clarify the order in which the steps should be taken, and, we hope, we've saved someone from making an error. Well, it's nice to combine all these independent clauses, but combining sentences can also eliminate redundant phrases and information. Garlic contains natural antibiotics. Onions also contain these substances. Once again, we have 2 factually and grammatically correct sentences, which is good. But remember, this is hardly enough for better quality writing that is more interesting to read. Garlic and onions contain natural antibiotics. By combining these 2 sentences, there is no need to repeat their shared element about natural antibiotics. Let's try this again with two new sentences. The players didn't seem to understand what had happened, and the referees didn't either. Well, this happens a lot, but let's express our disdain more concisely and more forcefully. Neither the players nor the referees seemed to understand what had happened. There, that did the trick. And sometimes in a long text, the readers can appreciate conciseness for its own sake. Let's check with our history student for another example. The Great Wall of China was built entirely by hand. It took hundreds of years to complete. We can streamline this. The Great Wall of China was built entirely by hand and took hundreds of years to complete. Streamlining our prose in this way leaves less chance for confusion, allows more space for further evidence, and makes your voice more confident. It can also strengthen connections between points. Here's an example. Leafy trees add beauty to your landscape. They also help to lower your energy bill in the summer. Good points here, but these two brief sentences separated by the pause of that period makes the second sentence seem less important, like an afterthought. Leafy trees not only add beauty to your landscape, but also help to lower your energy bill in the summer. That's better. Now the ideas seem equally important, which most likely is the writer's intention. Of course, sometimes eliminating repetition also eliminates confusion. Your body requires the macronutrients, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. It also requires the micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Here are a pair of sentences that may look confusing to a reader even before they've been read. Your body requires the macronutrients, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, as well as the micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Combining these sentences into one with parallel parts is less intimidating, and the parallel patterns help your brain process the information more quickly and clearly. By stating the point more concisely, this combination of shared elements in parallel or coordinate phrases also lend it more force. Let's see how that works. He was willing to assume the privileges of the office. He was not, however, willing to assume the responsibilities. Well, these sentences are certainly no endorsement, but they lack conviction. Let's fix that. He was willing to assume the privileges of the office, but not the responsibilities. Ouch! Now that sounds more emphatic. Let's see one more example of coordination through combination before we move to subordination through combination. She was a well-known jazz singer. She was also a well-respected portrait artist. Impressive, but let's emphasize her wide accomplishments. She was both a well-known jazz singer and a well-respected portrait artist. Perfect. Joining the sentences and adding the word both emphasizes the equal distinction of having these two skills. Ah, look, Bobo is happy with our progress and improvement. Thanks for the encouragement, Bobo. Now let's combine ideas to subordinate one to the other. Bye-bye, Bobo. Billie Jean King won 19 tournaments in 1971. She became the first woman tennis player ever to earn $100,000 a year. Another two grammatically and factually accurate sentences, but there are problems of it nevertheless. Are these points of equal importance? Is there a more direct correlation between them that is still unclear? When Billie Jean King won 19 tournaments in 1971, she became the first woman tennis player ever to earn $100,000 a year. Yes, that's better. By placing the first sentence in a clause headed by the adverb when, we both shift the emphasis to the second point and clarify the cause and effect relationship of the 2 points. Let's try this again. Our school system offers almost no instruction in financial planning. Few of us learn to handle our finances in an intelligent manner. This sounds dismal, but the larger point the writer wants to make could be more clear. Since our school system offers almost no instruction in financial planning, few of us learn to handle our finances in an intelligent manner. Now I see. The adverb clause headed by since makes the connection between the points clearer and therefore more persuasive. Now we can sense the implied responsibility the writer wishes to assign to the school system. Let's try another one. Mid-afternoon drowsiness is often called the post-lunch dip. It occurs regardless of when or if we eat. Okay, but how are these points connected? Although mid-afternoon drowsiness is often called the post-lunch dip, it occurs regardless of when or if we eat. Now we can see that the second point was meant to correct the first point. Okay, let's check in with our busy history student once more. Hamlin Garland spent his youth on farms in Wisconsin, Iowa, and South Dakota. He learned firsthand about grim pioneer life on these farms. These sentences seem to lack energy, and again, their connection could be more clear, and we can reduce that repetition as well. Hamlin Garland spent his youth on farms in Wisconsin, Iowa, and South Dakota, where he learned firsthand about grim pioneer life. That's much better. Problems have been fixed by subordinating the second point to the first with the adverb where. Before we move on to verbal phrases, though, let's do one more adverb clause. I was forced to go to my first dance with my cousin Talbot. His hair was longer than mine, and he danced like a trained bear. So what actually was the worst part of this date? I was forced to go to my first dance with my cousin Talbot, whose hair was longer than mine and who danced like a trained bear. So it wasn't the hair or the dancing technique, but the act of being forced that really irritated this writer. Okay, so now how can we combine sentences with verbal phrases? The wedding date was already set. She felt compelled to go through with the marriage. This seems dire, but I don't get the connection. Having already set the wedding date, she felt compelled to go through with the wedding. Wonderful. Using the verbal phrase that starts with the gerund word, or ing word, having, I now see where the bride's nervous compulsion comes from. Let's try another combination. You can dust the face slightly with a white frosted powder. This procedure will produce a faint glow. Sound makeup advice, but in these two sentences, the advice seems a bit wordy. Let's tighten that prose. To produce a faint glow, you can dust the face lightly with a white frosted powder. There you go. Problem solved. I know you're anxious to learn about appositives now, but let's do one more verbal phrase. Vines covered the entire house. They almost concealed it from the casual observer. Time to hire a gardener, but I'd like a longer sentence here for more variety in this paragraph. Vines covered the entire house, almost concealing it from the casual observer. That's better. But how can they breathe in there? Well, on to appositives. This automobile is an up-to-date mechanical achievement. It has a permanently engaged all-wheel drive system. While these sentences are generally clear, they seem a bit wordy. Can we fix that? This automobile, an up-to-date mechanical achievement, has a permanently engaged all-wheel drive system. Much better. We made the first sentence in a positive and inserted it into the second sentence. What's in a positive, you ask? It's a renaming of the subject. In this case, automobile is also renamed an up-to-date mechanical achievement. As both expressions name the same subject, they need only be separated by a comma. Okay, let's do one more for the road. Let's check in one last time with that exhausted history student. The Anchor Pub is the last survivor of the many Southwark taverns. It was built on the site of the Globe Theatre. Interesting, but wordy. The last survivor of the many Southwark taverns, the Anchor Pub was built on the site of the Globe Theatre. Much more concise and elegant. Congratulations! Now go off to the Quidditch match. Then return to start working on your sentence variety.